Hello, my name is Vilmaro. I was born long before the town, before the roads, before the screaming lights and hollow houses, before the thing beneath the earth learned how to dream through us. The forest used to be green once. I know it was. I try very hard to remember that, but memory has become difficult lately. The trees surrounding our home are slowly turning purple now, the color of old bruises spreading beneath dying skin. Their bark splits open in places during the night, and sometimes dark liquid leaks from inside them and gathers around the roots, like blood returning to the soil. The birds no longer sing here. They whisper. The wind does not smell alive anymore. It smells metallic, like rainwater left inside a corpse. That morning, I awoke beside the pond and saw Lethwin standing at the water's edge. He had many scars from their hunters, long pale wounds crossing his ribs and neck where metal had kissed bone. One of his ears had been torn almost completely away years ago. He survived things that should have killed him. But lately, he looked tired in a different way. Not wounded, hollow. The pond reflected the sky incorrectly behind him. I walked slowly through the fog toward him. Lethwin? I asked quietly. Does the water still taste normal to you? He continued drinking for a long time before answering. No, he murmured finally. Black water dripped slowly from his mouth. It tastes like old pennies now. I stared into the pond. The water had once been clear enough to see stones sleeping beneath the surface. Now it looked dark. Too dark, like something beneath it was swallowing the light. It began after Blackbourne disappeared, Lethwin whispered. All the mention of his name. The trees creaked softly around us. I lowered my head. We all remembered Blackbourne. One moment he had been gazing quietly beside the pines. Then he simply stopped existing. No sound, no tracks, and no blood. Only the grass moving as if something enormous had just finished breathing there. Do you think he's still alive? I asked. Lethwin finally turned toward me. For a moment his expression looked unfamiliar. No, he said softly. And if he is? He looked down at his reflection. I don't think he belongs to himself anymore. Silence drifted through the woods. Far away, hidden between the purple trees, stood the cabin. Lonely, windowless, and still. No deer entered that place, not even the dying ones. At night, we sometimes heard movement inside. Not footsteps, pealing sounds. I stepped beside Lethwin and lowered my head toward the pond. The water smelled rotten and sweet at the same time. I drank anyway. It tasted warm. The moment it touched my tongue, I felt something move deep inside my throat. Tiny. Crawling. I stopped immediately, but part of me wanted more. That frightened me. I left the pond and returned beneath the trees to sleep. Then I awoke again. The forest was dark. Night had arrived silently. My body felt stiff. The joints of my legs resisted movement as though they belonged to something already dead. The moon above the woods looked pale and swollen, and Lethwin was still drinking. He had not moved from the pond. His body stood perfectly motionless except for his mouth. Drinking, drinking, and drinking. Lethwin, I whispered in response. Lethwin, why are you still drinking? Slowly, without lifting his head, he answered. It tastes better now. The sound of his voice made my skin tighten. It no longer sounded entirely like him. I stepped closer to the water. The pond had turned completely black. Not reflective, not transparent. Black like an open mouth. Lethwin, I said shakily. Get away from the water. He slowly turned away from me, not toward me. Away. Hiding his face, something beneath his skin moved. Tiny shapes crawled through his neck in writhing patterns. His antlers trembled softly. Lethwin. He took one slow step backwards, and then another, retreating deeper into the woods without ever turning around. His legs cracked softly with each movement. I smelled rot. Lethwin, what's happening to you? From somewhere inside the trees, his voice answered faintly. The water remembers us. The forest became silent, completely silent. Even the insects stopped. I looked down at the pond again. The black water rippled gently, though nothing touched it. It looked inviting, warm, comforting. My throat ached with thirst. Just a little more, I thought, just enough to understand. I drank and drank and drank. The water slid thickly down my throat like living oil. My tongue began turning black, numb, swollen, and then suddenly it detached inside my mouth and fell into the pond with a soft splash. I staggered backwards in horror. Something inside my stomach wriggled violently. I could feel movement beneath my ribs, tiny legs, tiny teeth. My own body no longer felt inhabited correctly. Something is wrong, I tried to scream, but without my tongue, the words emerged, broken and wet. The forest answered. Around me, deer slowly emerged between the trees, all of them walking backwards, dozens. Their movements were synchronized unnaturally, like puppets dragged by invisible strings. Some hid their faces against tree bark. Others twitched violently. One deer's jaw hung loose by strands of flesh, while black insects crawled from its nostrils. I stumbled backward. I stumbled toward them desperately. Something is in the water, I cried, or tried to. The sounds coming from my throat no longer sounded like language, and then suddenly Lethwin emerged from the darkness. His face remained turned away from me. Yes, he whispered softly. We need to remove it from ourselves. Another voice called from deeper in the woods, low and calm. Wrong. I know how. From the tree stepped Blackborn. The others immediately became still at the sight of him. Blackborn looked thinner than before his disappearance. His body sagged strangely beneath his skin as if parts of him had been hollowed out. And his face looked too still, like it had stopped belonging to him. Where have you been? Lethwin asked weakly. Blackborn smiled. The expression did not reach his eyes. Underground, he whispered. Something moved beneath the earth beneath our hooves. A distance shifting, like something enormous turning in its sleep. Blackborn slowly looked toward the cabin. Come, he said gently, before it finishes learning your names. We followed him backwards through the woods. The cabin waited silently among the trees. Inside, the walls pulsed faintly like diseased lungs. The ceiling sagged overhead, wet. Breathing, Blackborn stood at the center of the room. The others gathered around him in a circle. For a moment, nobody spoke, and then Blackborn raised one hoof slowly towards his own face. If the parasite recognizes us by our faces, he whispered softly, then we must become strangers. Before anyone could react, he began peeling. Skin tore away from muscle in long wet strips. His face came loose slowly. I heard the sound of flesh separating from bone. Nobody screamed. The insects inside us would not allow screaming any more. Lethwin stepped forward next, and then another deer. Then another. One by one we began removing ourselves, pulling away eyes, cheeks, mouths, identity. I tore my own face free last. Pain flooded through me so violently the world became white. Warm blood poured down my chest, but underneath the agony, relief. The parasite could not wear what no longer existed. Put them on the ceiling, Blackborn whispered. So we did. Dozens of deer faces hanging above us like sleeping moons. Their empty eye holes stared downwards eternally, watching, waiting. The cabin smelled like like opened bodies. We stood there, faceless and trembling. For one beautiful moment, the crawling inside me stopped. Silence filled the room. Hope returned, and something moved beneath my skin again. All around me, the other deer suddenly stiffened. Our legs jerked unnaturally. My spine bent backwards without permission. The parasite was still inside us. It had never needed our faces, only our emptiness. Blackborn slowly tilted his head upward toward the ceiling of faces and began laughing. Not happily, despairingly. The sound echoed through the cabin like dying animals. Outside, beyond the forest, humans eventually arrived. They built houses, roads, streetlights, churches, a town, remnant hill, but beneath the roots, Beneath the soil, beneath the memories, something remained listening, learning, and growing, and through the years I felt it spreading from us into them, into their thoughts, into their families, and into their reflections. The last thing I remember before my voice disappeared completely was the sound of people screaming that their loved ones looked wrong, and deep underground, something enormous, breathing softly in the dark.